morning, friends, and a early happy new year to you all. It is almost New Year's, which is absolutely insane to me. I can't believe it's already 2023, and I have big plans. I have exciting things for my birthday next week, lots of just fun things coming next year. But before we jump into the new year, I wanted to talk about my top 10 favorite books of 2022 with y'all, and also give you a little sneak peek of what I have planned for our next year. So let's just jump in. Alright, so I am going to start with my 10th favorite and work my way up to my favorite book of the year. It was very difficult to narrow it down to a top 10, but these were just the ones that stuck out to me personally. It might not be everyone's favorites, but they're mine, so I'm going to share them with you. And there's kind of a wide range of genres and authors and kind of just a bunch of different types of books, because that was one of my goals for 2022, was to kind of branch out of my normal fantasy fiction reading and kind of explore a wide range of genres, a wide range of different authors and different things like that. So I think this kind of accurately shows what my year looks like. But let's stop chatting. Let's get right into our top 10. All right, so my 10th favorite was A Court of Silver Flames. Now this might surprise some of y'all. This is my only Sarah J. Maas book that is in my top 10. I just recently discovered her this year, and she was really the reason I got back into reading. I took a very long hiatus, mainly because of school. I was just burnt out and needed a break, and Sarah J. Maas was the reason I got back into my love of reading. So I had to include one of them in here for sure, and it might be a surprise that it's the Silver Flames instead of A Court of Mist and Fury, and that was because I absolutely loved the main character of A Court of Silver Flames. The main character switches over to Nesta's point of view, who is an older sister who is struggling with a lot of trauma and overcomes a lot with a found family, and I got a little called out. I really related to Nesta. I related to her story. I absolutely loved everything that she kind of went through. I feel like it was extremely relatable. It felt real, it felt honest. Of course, I love the romance between her and Cassian, but truly, I just connected with Nesta as a character, and that's why this one was my favorite out of all of the Court of Thorns and Roses series. I just absolutely loved it, and I can't wait for more. So yeah. My 9th favorite read of the year was Mexican Gothic. This year was the first year I really broke into thrillers. I hadn't really read a lot prior to this year, and this one was just my cup of tea. I absolutely loved it. It has kind of a dark cottagecore vibes with like mushrooms, and you're kind of trapped into a house, almost like a little bit yellow wallpapery, kind of draws on a lot of classic feminist horror tropes, which I kind of loved. I really loved it, and I loved the connection with the main character and her cousin. I loved trying to figure out the mystery while kind of being terrified of what this house has to offer. I again loved the kind of cottagecore vibes. I loved the aesthetics of each character. Everything about it was just absolutely phenomenal, and then the ending was crazy. It was super fast paced. I was like rushing through this book. I think it only took me about 4 hours to read. I just was cruising through it. It was absolutely phenomenal. So if you have not read this, please do. I know the author actually just came out. She just came out with a brand new novel, so I'm super excited to give that a look. But yeah, just a phenomenal thriller read. It got me really excited to kind of explore the genre more this coming year. I just absolutely loved it. My 8th favorite read of the year was Legends and Lattes. I loved this book. I thought it was so cute, so warm and cozy, and I truly think this is the future of cozy fantasy, and it kind of I think broke ground when it came to that, to show that you can have fantasy characters not battling to their deaths and have it still be a very interesting and fun read. I loved it. I loved the kind of cute, fluffy romance. I loved all of the characters working together to build a small little coffee shop. I loved the building of a community. It just made me feel warm. It made me feel safe and cozy, and I needed that at the end of this year. So this came at the perfect time for me, and it also just, again, showed me a whole new world when it came to fantasy. So I'm excited to kind of branch out into more cozy fantasies. If you all have any cozy fantasy recommendations, please let me know, because I'd love to read more. But if you have not read this, please do. It's absolutely phenomenal. My 7th favorite read of the year is I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. This book was just beautifully written. It's written by a poet, as y'all know, and I feel like poets write the best memoirs. They're just always beautifully written. They are dynamic. Everything about them are just incredible, and this one is no different. It deals with a lot of heavy topics, but I think important topics, and it just shows life in a heartbreaking, funny, moving way. I was just entranced by this book, even though there's difficult topics in it. I thought every single page was incredible. There was no slow moments in this book. It was just beautiful all the way through. Absolutely phenomenal. Please give this book a read if you have the chance. My 6th favorite book of the year was A Mind Spread Out on the Ground. This is another memoir, and this one was by Elisa Elliott, and it talks about kind of the mixing of identities that I think just exists in today's culture, and how that specifically with her deals with whiteness and her indigenous heritage. And it's just, again, beautifully written. This one is written in a series of essays. Every single essay was very well researched. She had lots of articles to kind of back up her individual arguments, while also adding in those personal anecdotes in a very beautifully well-written way. It was just absolutely phenomenal. I loved learning more about her heritage, her experiences, while also learning through, you know, her research that she did. She did a really excellent job of just meshing everything together, and it was just, again, phenomenal. Absolutely recommend reading it if you have the chance. All right, so we officially made it to the top 5 books of my year, and I'm really excited to show them to you. So my 5th favorite book of the year, I don't have the physical copy of, but it's Heartstopper Volume 4. I really think this is Volume 4 is just where Alice Oseman hit their stride. She did just such an excellent job of building out Nick and Charlie's relationships with each other, with other characters. I just really get all of like the, you know, friendship vibes, but it also deals with mental illness in a very beautiful way, and it's one of like the only books that I've read recently that shows how mental illness can affect couples, individuals, and people surrounding you, and not make it negative, if that makes any sense. I know for me personally, I struggle with depression and anxiety, a couple other mental illnesses. And, you know, my husband has to deal with that as well. We have to kind of deal with it together as a couple, and it's not always negative. It can build a relationship, even though it's difficult, and I just think that, you know, Alice Oseman did a wonderful job at portraying that in Volume 4 of Heartstopper. Again, I just think that's where, you know, Heartstopper is at its peak. It's absolutely wonderfully written. The art style is gorgeous, beautiful. I loved everything about it. My 4th favorite read of the year is The Song of Achilles. It took me so long to pick up this book, and I'm a little bit mad at myself for it. It's phenomenal, and it deserves every single ounce of praise that it gets. It's incredible. It's very well written. You can feel like you are reading from Patroclus's point of view. You really feel like you are transported to the Trojan War and to that realm and that world. I love the relationship between Achilles and Patroclus. I think it's beautiful. I love the kind of like childhood to lovers arc that they have. The ending is heartbreaking in the best kind of way. And if you are just, you know, a Greek mythology nerd, you have to read this. I think it's like a required reading at this point. It's amazing and I absolutely loved everything about it. I'm super excited to see what Madeline Miller writes next because I've already loved her other novels, but this is definitely my favorite of all of hers. My third favorite book of the year is The Vanishing Half. This book just blew my mind. I've told you all this before, but I hadn't read this book because it got a really bad review from someone that I trusted personally, and so I didn't read it for a very long time. And I'm so glad I picked it up and started reading it because it truly is one of the best novels I've read in a very, very long time. It has a super interesting concept dealing with two mothers, twins, who end up kind of choosing different paths in life. One chooses to live her life out as a Black woman, the other chooses to live her life out as a white woman because they can kind of both pass as white. And it shows not only their lives, but their children's lives as well, and how that changes everything for these families. I absolutely loved it. I felt adding that, you know, extra generation shows how important choices can be for generation to generation. I absolutely loved each and every character. I don't think any one of them fell flat for me. Each one was super dynamic, and I loved that we could read from the POVs of the two daughters as well. It just brought the whole story together in a really incredible way that I was not expecting. I loved the time jumps telling the story. I don't think it was confusing at all, which is a feat because I do think that a lot of times when you're jumping back and forth in time, it can kind of be overwhelming. But, you know, Britt Bennett just did it incredibly well. She did such a good job with this book, and I loved it. It was fantastic. If you have not read this, please, 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 please do. It's amazing. I don't want to say anything more to like spoil things, but I could talk about this book for ages, so please read it. My second favorite book of the year is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. I thought this book was just phenomenal. I absolutely love romances. I think they're incredible. I love reading them. But I do think that a lot of times with contemporary romance, the romance falls short. It lacks, you know, dynamic characters. It lacks interesting storytelling that this book has. I think this is the right way to do romance, is to prioritize story, and the romance will come, if that makes any sense. I think this did romance better than a lot of books that I read this year, and I love Addie's story. I love the concept of having a kind of like time traveler concept where you have this immortal being, but she's constantly forgotten. She has no one that remembers her, and she's kind of trying to live life through that until someone does. And it's really, really incredible. I love everything about it. Again, I just think that this is what romance should be striving for, is telling interesting stories, telling new, unique things, being well written. I think we need to be looking for better romances. I don't know. I loved this book. I thought it was fantastic. I already want to reread it and just kind of destroy it with annotations. Everything about it was just phenomenal. And the writing is just good. It's just good writing. I don't know. It's great. Just read it. It's phenomenal. Everyone that is telling you to read it is right. So yeah. And that brings us to my favorite book of the year. And this surprised me. This was a nonfiction book. So first of all, big surprise there. It was kind of like a memoir of sorts. And I also read it through the audiobook. So like, Three big surprises for me. I was not expecting this book to be as good as it was, but it was just life-changing for me, and so I had to put it at my number one, and that was Braiding Sweetgrass. This book, I'm not joking, literally changed the way I view the world. It changed the way that I view my personal life, my interactions with others. It changed how I view nature, how I view my like own spiritual practices. Everything about it was just phenomenal, life-changing. It was beautifully written. You can tell that the author is also a poet because she just writes so beautifully. The metaphors and the stories and everything that she tells is just so beautifully written and kind of attached to each other in a very beautiful way. It just, I fell in love with it. It was phenomenal, and I highly recommend reading it through the audiobook because it sounds like your mom is like telling you bedtime stories in like a good way. It's very comforting. And again, this was just life-changing for me. It changed my entire world perspective, which I feel like is the point of reading sometimes, is gaining new perspectives, learning, and becoming a better person. And so this one was just, you know, my number one. I can't wait to get my hands on a physical copy and reread it and again, destroy it with annotations. I just want to get my hands on this, so I will be book shopping soon. But it was a perfect book. I can't say anything bad about it. It was perfect. But that was my top 10 of the year. I do have some other 5-star reads that I've written reviews on, and if you want to check those out, you can check out my Bookstagram or my Goodreads, and all of those are there. But I quickly wanted to chat a little bit about 2023, some of my plans, some of my goals, and some 5-star predictions of books that I want to read. So yeah. So for 2023, I want to read 100 books, which is a big leap for me. I usually read, you know, about 20 to maybe 40. I did 43 this year. So 100's a leap for me. But I am taking a break off from school, just kind of to give myself a little bit of breathing room before I start my master's. And so I decided this year I'm just gonna go all out and read 100 books. So I'm very, very excited. I have all of my books kind of already planned out for January. But if y'all want to leave me any recommendations, please do. I'd love to read books that are y'all's favorites. But I do have some books that I'm very, very excited for that I already think are going to be 5-star reads going into this year. So let's talk about those. The first one that I think is going to be a 5-star read and is a book that I'm reading this January is Babel. I have heard phenomenal things about this book. I am really going into it expecting big things, so hopefully it doesn't disappoint me. But I will let you know. I'm going to be reading this January, so a review will be coming out very soon. But I definitely think this will be a 5-star read. It is a kind of dark academia vibe book that is kind of discussing the colonialism in academia. And again, I've heard that just phenomenal things about this. So I have very large expectations. But we'll see. The next book that I think is gonna be a 5-star read coming into 2023 is Hellbent. This is the sequel to Ninth House, which I have not read yet. I am planning on reading both of these kind of together in succession. I also think Ninth House is going to be kind of a 4-star or 5-star read, but I don't know. I'm holding out hope for the sequel. The cover already looks really fascinating, and again, I've heard phenomenal things about Ninth House, so I shouldn't expect any less from the sequel, right? So Hellbent actually comes out January 10th, so I'll be trying to get it around then, but I probably won't end up reading it until February. Either way, I think this is definitely going to be a 5-star read for me, but who knows, we'll see, right? The next book that I am very, very excited for coming into 2023 is romantic comedy. This book is coming out around April 11th, April 12th, and it's supposed to be kind of, addressing the romantic comedy genre in a funny, humorous way while being itself a romantic comedy. So I'm very excited about this book. I have high expectations. I just feel like it's going to be one of my favorites of the year, especially since I love books that, address themselves. I think that's hilarious, and I also think it's, a wonderful deep dive on just reader and book culture, which coming into these last couple of years, I feel like has just been growing phenomenally. There's been a lot more when it comes to book culture, so I am pumped to read this book. And this book I just am kind of throwing in here. I don't know if this is going to be a 5-star read for me per se, but I am fascinated about it, and I think a lot of people are, especially after the new kind of docu-series of them chatting about stuff that just came out on Netflix. But I am pumped for Spare by Prince Harry. I'm fascinated. I'm not like a person who really jumps into all of the monarchy drama. I don't know tons about it. I do know a little bit from my watching of The Crown, but I don't know how accurate that is. Either way, I think this is fascinating. I want to give it a read. I feel like they are really coming out of the woodworks, chatting about what their experiences have been. So I'm excited for this memoir. I have big hopes. I don't know how well written it's going to be. I don't know if, Prince Harry even wrote it himself, if it was someone else, if it was a ghostwriter of sorts. Either way, I am very interested and I want to see what it's about. So I think that one's coming out also in January. I'm not positive on that, but I don't know. I'm fascinated. Let me know if you guys are also interested in kind of that whole realm of things. If you can educate me, please do, because I am very new to that world. But as soon as I saw this memoir coming out, I was like, what is happening? I was very excited about it. So those are a couple reads that I'm really pumped for 2023. Hopefully I can make my 100 book goal, but goals are not the most important thing about reading. I think just picking up a book is all that matters. But either way, I hope all of you have a wonderful rest of 2022 and a wonderful New Year's. Let me know what you guys are doing to celebrate. We're actually, I think, going to a board game cafe, which will be so fun. I wish you all well, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!